Hey friends, welcome back to the craft room. I am really glad that you're here. It is blockhead day, even though it's not Thursday. I remember at the beginning of the week I said this was gonna be a weird week, and I didn't lie. So here we are on Friday doing a blockhead. This is how far we've gotten. This is all 10 blocks. I've done doubles of each, and I'm really excited because we've got 2 more blocks to do. That does mean if I want a 5x5, because I want 1 more row down here at the bottom, that we'll have to do 1 random scraggler block, but we'll figure that out in the last episode. That's not my problem right now. This one is going to be foundation paper piecing. I realize that there are 2 very opposite sides of the spectrum on whether you want to do it or not. I am very passionate for it because I think it is so fun, and there are just as many people very passionate against it because they don't think it's fun. So hopefully this is a good maybe insight today, or if you're not for it, then you can just like watch me for my weirdness. I mean, whatever, right? This is a free pattern that came in my piecing paper, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But I also like Tiny Llama quilts. She has some pretty cute foundation piecing as well. My most favorite one right now is this pattern. It's by Apples and Beavers. This is a new one that I just found on Instagram actually, and she does a lot of paper piecing, and it is so cute. So this was her original pattern, and I thought that was really cute. I love this little duck back here, but I thought I'm not gonna make that. It's really cute, but that's not for me, right? And then she kind of made an addition to this, and she made a mallard. So you have a daddy duck and a mama duck with all the baby ducks, which such a cute idea, but I was really just in it for the mallard. So I bought this whole stinking pattern for this mallard because my husband is a big duck hunter. Look at it. Is that not the cutest duck? I love it so much. I think his little feet are so cute. So truth be told, I actually forgot to do 1 more piece of background right here so that his body was a little bit more rounded. But I kind of like that he's square because he just looks that much cuter. He's a lumpy duck and he's so cute. But I thought that this would be a really fun quilt if I could find like a black lab piecing pattern, or I mean any lab, and then corn dogs. That's not what they're called. That's not what they're called. I call them corn dogs because they look like corn dogs. Cattails. I'm pretty sure they're called cattails. But I call them corn dogs because they look like corn dogs, and you know, my brain just like revolves around food because, you know, that's just me. But I think that would be really cute if we could get some of these corn dogs, a dog, and a duck and a quilt. That would just be like my husband to a T. But I just think that is so stinking cute. So I love all of the things that you can create with foundation paper piecing that you really wouldn't be able to create otherwise. And you just sew right on a line. It's going to be perfect every time. Unless you miss a piece and then you have a square duck. But I'm a square duck, so it's all good. Whew. What? Okay, next up, the paper. This is the paper that I really like to use. You can find it on Amazon. I like this because it's like a dryer sheet. That's what it reminds me of. So it kind of has that same texture where it's sturdy, but it's not. It's a very easy tear when it comes to ripping these pieces off of the back. So you're in foundation paper piecing, you're literally sewing the fabric onto this paper, and then you tear the paper off. I did start using copy paper, and yes, it does work, but it's really hard to get all the little bits out. And so I also have been told multiple times about the wax paper method, and every time they explain it to me, I'm like, okay, like this is the outward face, but inside my head is like, but you tear it. I don't get how you can reuse wax paper if you tear it like everything else. So it's like the smile and nod. They're being nice and informative, but in your head you're like, I don't get it. And I am too embarrassed to admit to you that I don't get it. Give it a go, or maybe hate it a little bit less. Follow your heart. This one is Moda Blockheads number 5. This is group 2, block 14. I'm just gonna do the dark blue middle with brown and tan kind of accents in this X here. I think that'll be really pretty. So it'll put some more color kind of back into it, but not too much. That's my goal here. Foundation paper piecing is an excellent scrap buster. Let's stop talking about it and let's just do it. Here I have cut out all of my triangles. I have run that paper through the printer and it'll copy and print. And this is what it looks like in the pattern. So I have just cut outside of that dotted line because that is our seam allowance. And I've cut out all of our triangles. So they do have the 6-inch version, but we're doing 12 inches because that's what the rest of our board is. And we're gonna start with A. This is right side up, but we sew on the wrong side. Don't ask me why we do it. That's just how I learned it and we follow it. So good side, down, maybe so when you flip it over, it's easy to read. I don't know. But we start with 1. So this is gonna be our first piece. Then we'll move to 2, 3, and 4. And what I really like about this pattern actually is that it even tells you in the pattern where it fits. So I like that a lot. Some foundation paper piecing patterns don't have that. So it's a little bit easier to remember what piece goes where. So my A1 on here is, oh, well, those are C's, but my A1 is a brown. So paper is right side down, and then we have A1, which is kind of big, kind of long and skinny. I also love that there's no measuring here. You just hack into your fabric and it's great. First piece is always right side up, and then we pin. So you can see through here that I have everything covered for A1. I actually want a little bit more fabric right here. So let's maneuver that a little bit. I'm going to use the light so that we get all of our edges really covered. So I kind of turned it so that it really kind of covers that point there. Do you see? We want to have overlap. So we will trim this as we go, and that'll make sense here in just a second. But we want that overlap. So now we flip over to the right side. We're gonna fold right on that line between A1 and A2. We're gonna get our skinny ruler or our ruler, line the fold of the paper up with our 1/4 inch line and trim. So now we have a nice straight line here for our brown, and we know that we will have our seam allowance as well. So A2 on mine is tan, but now we need to find a piece that's big enough, not only for our section, but when it's folded up and over from this seam, it'll cover. So this one is too small. It won't cover that point. So we're gonna need another long skinny rectangle to kind of cover all of that. I really need one of those holders, camera holders that will let me like look at my hands. That would probably make this a lot easier. And I always say go bigger than what you need because I'd rather get it right and too big the first time than have it be too short and have to pull my seam out because ripping a seam on foundation paper piecing sucks. All right, so fold it over on that line. We will definitely have enough to cover our piece. So we're gonna put those two together and we are going to sew on this line. If you're feeling uncomfortable keeping it there, you can definitely pin it. Just line it up with the edge of our brown. Since we cut that nice seam allowance there, we're gonna use it. So let's get this under our machine. Let me scooch you a little. I'm going to come to the line between A1 and A2, and I'm going to put my needle down. But before I go any farther, I am going to shorten my stitch. So I did try on this machine to do a bigger stitch just to see how it would handle it, and it didn't do well. So we're going to change our, that's the wrong dial. Cool, cool, cool. We're gonna change our stitch length down to tiny, because the tinier the stitch, first of all, the better it'll hold, but it's really punching holes in all your paper, so by the time it comes to tear, it's really easy to tear. And we are going to start our stitch, back stitch, and then continue the rest of the length. Then when we get to the end, we'll back stitch and go back to the end so that those edges are really secure, because again, when you tear, you're putting pressure on the edge of that seam, and we want to make sure that nothing unravels or comes loose when we're ripping. So this is all precautionary so that you can tear all the paper out and still keep what you've made. So we start, I went a little bit, now I'm going to back stitch back to where I started, and now we're going to go that whole length. Stop at our end, back stitch, and then go to our end again. And there is one piece. Scissors. Man, I am telling you, am I just that much of a slob? I remember the time when I made these videos and I had all of my items needed all set up. I guess I've just gotten lazier as time goes on. That's cool. So we'll use these big scissors because I don't know where my little ones are. All right, there we have our first seam. We can take all of our pins out and we can go iron this up and over, and then we'll move on to 3. Let me go iron. There we have our nice ironed over fabric, and you can see on the back it's a little crazy, right? But we will trim all of this at the end and it will make sense. Next up is A3, so we're going to do the other side of this brown. A3 on my map is a blue. So again, we're going to fold on that line in between A1 and A3. Put our ruler on that fold at the 1/4 inch so that we have our seam allowance. And then repeat. We're going to need another long piece. We learned that in the last side. And we are going to put that on there. Pin if you'd like. And then repeat that process. So sewing right on this solid line between A1 and A3. There we have that one nice and ironed out. So now we've got A1 to A2 done. We've got A3 done. We move on to our last piece, which is A4. Fold on that line, again with the 1/4 inch, and trim. So I will save these big bits because I'll probably end up using them again in here. A4 on my map is background. Let's see. Probably a nice big thick rectangle here. Let's see, what length do we need? Probably there-ish. That looks good. Right side down, line it up with our seam that we've trimmed with all the fabric. So I like that about with the trim fabric, you know exactly where to put it because we've already made that 1/4 inch cut. Pinned it down, and let's go sew on that seam again. take our pin out. And there we have our last piece here. Oh my goodness, what a beautiful creation we've just made. Wow, that looks good. I'm gonna go iron this and then we'll be back. There is our last piece ironed over. Now we're gonna flip it over and we are going to trim the entire outside of this block. So I'm gonna line my 1/4 inch up with the solid line, which should then meet up with the dotted line on the outside. And we're gonna trim all that off. I'm gonna come to this side, same thing, 1/4 inch line on the solid line. Now in this one, they have little curves and we will cut those on the corners. Those are helping with bulk when they meet up, so those ones are important to trim off. There's our last little bits, but I can just do that without the ruler. So I'm going to come here and here. And you can see it kind of gives us those rounded corners in there. So this corner will be where it meets in the middle and we sew our points together, but this will be literally in the center of the block and there's going to be a lot of congestion in there. And up here when we sew this to the other stripe, so make sure you cut those curves. It really does help. We'll put those to the side because we might use those. And there we have the first piece of our block. So it looks like there's going to be 2 pieces, 2 triangles per corner, and these will make a square. Now this is going to be the longest transition ever. For you it'll be a breeze, but for me this is probably going to take me an hour. So I will see you soon. I'm going to put the rest of these blocks together and then we'll catch up for assembly. There we have all of our pieces. Now, I don't think that took me actually an hour, maybe like a half hour, but this is a nice, easy foundation paper piecing pattern. So if you're just learning this, I think this is a great option because your sections aren't too small and there aren't a ton of them either. So this is a good learning one. Let's clear all of our mess here and make a mess over there out of the camera that you can't see. Okay, so G and H come together to make a corner like this. Let's just, G is this bottom corner. And then E and F come together to make this corner. Then we have D and C for this corner. And last but not least, A and B. A and B. Isn't that cool? I think it's really neat. So humor me and say, yeah, Kate, super cool. We are going to sew these 2 together. We're going to do all of our corners and then we'll put our corners together. To assemble corners, we want to line these up as best as we can. We are still not going to be sewing on that dotted line. We are going to sew solid right here in the middle. And if you notice, the solid line does not go all the way to these points. We are stopping where the solid line stops. Because if we sew directly into the middle all the way, then again, we're going to get that bunching right in the middle because we now have all of this meeting together. So solid line only, and point to point, do not pass sew past that solid line. So here's my seam. You can see that I stopped at the solid lines. I did backstitch at the top and at the bottom, again, just for extra security when we start ripping this. We're going to repeat the same process for our 4 corners, and then when we get that far, we'll assemble our block. There we have all 4 corners sewn together. I am going to go iron these all open, and then we will start assembling our square. So I'm going to open that seam up. So that way when we start connecting, we relieve some of that bulk there in the middle. I'll see you in a sec. All right, here we have all of our seams ironed open. That's C and D, E, F, G, and H. So already you can see in that middle that those curved corners are really helping, because that could be pretty chunky. So we're just going to sew these two together and these two together and then assemble in the middle. But same thing with these ones, we are only going to sew on the solid line. So you will be sewing over our seam right here, but that's okay. Just keep it a 1/4 inch away from the middle. If you need a little help, you can open it up and take a peek, but do not sew all the way to the middle. Again, just helps with bulk. Let's see this cutie come together so that we can start being destructive and rip that paper. And there we have our star. Look at how these lines turned out. I'm gonna say I did that on purpose, but that looks pretty cool. I wanted to show you this even on the back. When it came to sewing my 2 rows together, you can see this long seam here. I still went solid line to solid line, then kind of jumped the middle and then started again solid line to solid line. So even when putting those rows together, I still did not sew in the middle. So you can kind of see that there's like a little hole in there, but it will not fray or come unraveled because it's all tucked in there nicely. But even though there's a lot of layers in there, look how smooth that laid down anyways. So there you go. Now we get to the fun part where we get to rip stuff. This is literally just tearing all of this paper out. And like I said, I have tried this with copy paper, and if that's what you're doing right now, then that's a-okay. It can be done. It's just a lot easier because copy paper is kind of thick. So if you are using that, then maybe just spray your paper so that it gets a little bit wet. But I really recommend these sheets, these paper piecing sheets. They're really nice. I always have a hard time getting the long skinny ones out of the seams. But this is pretty much all we're going to do all the way around, is we're going to rip all this paper out. I'll give it one more good press just to kind of lay things down after they've been disrupted by all the tearing. And if you felt like the first half of this process was messy, you just wait, sweet cheeks, because it's going to get messier. There we have all of our paper ripped out of the back there and our big old giant mess. Let's just give that the old scoop into the trash can. Give it one more press so that it lays down nicely again, and then we're done. Okay, that one was fun, and this turned out so cool. I love this block. What do you think? Oh my gosh, I think it's going to be a perfect addition here. Oh yeah, it fits in really nicely. I love it. Let me know if you're going to give this one a try. I really encourage you to give it a go. Maybe even if you know that you don't like it, try this one. It's really simple. And if you haven't tried it yet, then try this one. It's really simple. It was really good to see you, friends, even if it was a little bit later in the week. We are starting to get some quilt blocks back from the Mystery Stitches game. So we'll see how many blocks I get back through the weekend, because we'll do a little video where I start showcasing them and showing you what I have. I have some physical blocks coming, and I even have some through the email. So that's going to be pretty exciting. We will see you next time. Hopefully on Monday, but we'll see what happens. Bye, friends.